Hello, and welcome to this episode of Central Valley Stories, Advertising and Public Relations. On this podcast, we talk history, trends, changes, and challenges with some of the region's veteran practitioners and agency owners. I'm your host, Professor Betsy Hayes, in the Media, Communications, and Journalism Department at Fresno State. Enjoy! Today, we are so happy to have in the studio Jill Wagner, and Jill is going to share with us, oh my goodness, all kinds of wonderful things because she has had such an interesting and delightful career full of lots of adventures and has tons of wisdom. For those of you who know Jill, you are ready for the wisdom, and I'm sure that's why you're tuning in. So don't worry, I will ask her for wisdom. So first of all, welcome. Thank you for being here. For context, for our listeners, let's talk about your career path and how did it all begin?
I think public relations is a career that people don't, maybe today they do, but for a while, I think you find it or it finds you. I don't know that I was saying, I want to be a PR major because I didn't really understand what the profession was. I liked writing and I liked to improve my writing and I liked people. Along with the writing, I was a journalism major. And then a professor at Fresno State who I hadn't had a class with said, hey, I see you around the department a lot. Why aren't you a PR major? And I'm like, I don't know. And so I think I have a journalism major with a PR option because I took the courses. And when I got out of school, there weren't a lot of journalism jobs. They were super hard to find. Probably was an economic thing, but there were PR jobs. And I had a few PR internships. One was fun, one was not. And so I decided maybe I'll go on the fun zone, find decent people to work with, and then so I ended up in PR. But I don't think it was intentional in my thinking back then when I was young. But it has actually delivered a lot on the writing because you do more than you could ever imagine. And you put together words that you never thought you would stick together. And it's like, well, look at that.
Oh, I love it. And yes, and thank you so much for right away talking about the writing, because I think that maybe not everyone knows that public relations is so much writing, and it's definitely a big part of what we do.
The shows that are on that show PR people in various states, they never show that part of it because they show the glamorized part and the events and the conversations and the relationships, but they don't show the hardcore work that is the base of the profession, which is writing and strategy and not just doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff so that you're strategic. So I think it's glamorized and it looks fun. And so it looks that way. But the truth is it's a lot of writing and it's a lot of editing. Mm-hmm. And that's great because it's communicating.
And it is fun, and it is all that. And I think you're right. I think that it's very one-sided, though, some of those media portrayals or entertainment media portrayals. So you heard it here. Right, people, if you want to do this, which we'll get to at the end. So first job, second job, talk us through the wonderful things that you have done.
I tell students now a lot that life is not linear, and we're tricked into believing that because the government gives us a K-16 educational experience. Many people don't know that kindergarten is not required in the state of California. It's an optional grade, and parents are like, we love our children so much. Well, let's have transitional kindergarten when they're 5 or PK when they're 4, and schools are ramping up and doing that. But because it's a year-over-year thing, we believe life is like that. We get through with school, then we find our job, and we develop whatever kind of family we want, and blue, and grow and get promoted and think about job titles and stuff like that. And I learned pretty early on that was sort of not real. The linear nation wasn't real. And so I think I walked in May, but I had another course to do in the semester. It was like a research class because I hadn't taken a full load to accommodate an internship. So I kind of got out in December, and I was actually working part-time at a law firm doing this and that, just whatever. And when my first career job came along and my first offer in March of that year, I had to take a pay cut from a part-time job to full-time. And that was hard because I'm like, I'll just stay at the law firm, work less and whatever, but I knew I had to break into my field. And so I didn't feel the pressure as much because I was making good money part-time and I did want to be in my career, but it didn't come along for a while. And, I was thinking about it, but I was content. They liked me. I was having fun. And the funny thing is, at the law firm, several of the lawyers there, many who are judges now, but the lawyers have been kind of a source of clients for me when I started my business because they recognize that while they can legally help their client. Their client might need help with reputation, image, that type of thing. And so they've actually been a really good source of clients that I never would think, back then. So I ended up at a media organization. And from there, I was recruited to a school district. And I'm like, what is school district PR? And they had never had the position, but other large school districts in the Valley had, but this particular district didn't. And so I'm like, well, I'll give it a shot. And then I enjoyed being around the whole vibe of education without having to be a teacher, because that's hard. And from there, I just kind of went along with school PR. My next 2 career jobs were in progressively larger districts. And then when you're in a school district, you become, especially if you're the only person, you become a utility person. You have to learn a little bit of everything because you don't have a staff to send it to. And the ferries do not work when you're out of the office. So you have to come back and do all this extra work. But I enjoyed it a lot. And so I ended up working for a large urban district that was just me and an assistant, like an administrative assistant. That was fun. And it was crisis every day, but I had already kind of attuned into crisis. And crises happen when there's lots of people serving lots of people, and when people mix it up, because not everybody behaves, or things happen, or what have you. So you don't intentionally go, I'm going to get into education or healthcare, because there's a lot of people doing lots of stuff, and I'm going to be a crisis communicator. It's like, that was absolutely not by design. I'm a very empathic person. I cry at weddings of people I don't know, TV commercials, whatever. I'm known. Every time something's on TV, the family would look at me. It's like, she's crying. It's like, I can't help it. But I was able to compartmentalize because I couldn't internalize some of these crises because, number one, they're not mine. Number two, I'm not doing my good work if I'm emotional and being led by that. However, in later years, I become more emotional because there are urgent things to get done. So I kind of pressure, let's not wait, let's get things done. So I left K-12 work. I went to work for a private company because I was just tired of media relations. I was like, I've had it. But I was a spokesperson. I was done. And so I went to a private company for a few years, and then I got recruited by Fresno State. They're like, we have a position. And I'm like, So I went to Fresno State and worked on a campaign for Fresno State. And then I left Fresno State to go to Children's Hospital. And then when I was there, I decided to become a consultant. I'd been actually kicking it around for 10 years. I don't know what kept me from activating, probably confidence or, there's a lot of decisions to be made when you're going to just rely on yourself. But I've always relied on myself. I've always supported myself. So I thought this is just a different format. So I've been a consultant coming on 10 years. So that's my whole ragged, nonlinear story.
I love it. And I so appreciate you underlining the nonlinear component because you're correct. We are raised this milestone, this milestone, this milestone, this milestone. And then for many people, when we get into young adulthood, the path often windy and sometimes bumpy and sometimes linear, but usually not.
And I think there's this illusion of control. Nobody controls anything. It's just we all pretend. And some people hold on tighter in their personal lives because the world or their work doesn't make sense. And I think, if you can just identify what you like and what you're good at, because they're going to go hand in hand. And if you end up in a place where it doesn't align with your values personally, you're not going to do a good job in PR because people will see through you and it might be great money. And sometimes some people think they have to be promoted and have fancy titles. And that has never meant anything to me. I think maybe when I was young, it did, but then it's like, I don't care because I was more interested in function. Because I learned being in mostly large organizations, there's lots of people with big titles who don't know anything. And they're getting paid and rewarded, couldn't make a decision to save their life, bad judgment, all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care about titles because they just don't matter. I would find the people who really knew the stuff, the GSD people, the get stuff done people. And that's who I aligned with. And I'd always ask people, what is your job called? And they'd tell me in like a title. And I'm like, well, what do you do? And then I find out what they do. And I'm like, oh, I think we can work together on this. So making alliances and everything was fun. But I've never cared about titles. I know young people do. Create your own title. Because in the end, what matters is the work and the people you meet and your reputation. So it doesn't really matter what your title is. That's just a little armchair advice.
I love it. So back to the early part of your career. Tell us about an early win, something that was particularly interesting or that you're proud of from the beginning-ish.
I think TV used to be way more important, TV news, important and relevant than I think it is now. There weren't as many channels, cable hadn't busted out. And so if you were on the TV, any TV station representing a cause or got your company or client there, it was a big win because everybody would see it. The depth of their viewership was high and it was a big thing. And if you had the trifecta, if you were in the newspaper, on the major news radio station and one of the channels, it was like everybody was talking about you. And so it was kind of like getting those were early wins because people were like, they never come and cover us. And it's like, you've got to give them a reason. You can't just say, we're having blah, please come. You have to say, this is what's happening. meeting. And early on, I would write visuals for media. When you come, you're going to see this. It's not going to be a bunch of adults in suits doing this. You're going to see this, this, and this. And so I painted a picture for them so they knew they had a visual impact because they're a visual medium. And so we had really good success. And when I was younger in my career, it's like, woohoo, that's great. I think one of the things I did was at a school district, the big one, there were many students who would get awards. And there's so many organizations to give awards and they get lost. It meant a lot to the student. And so I was trying to figure out how to increase that recognition, because coming to a school board meeting, they don't know what the school board is. They know it's a big meeting. They know the superintendent's there, but they might drag their parents, but it's just like, it's a thing. So I kind of triangulated a city council and a county board of supervisors map over the district map. And so one thing happened in a supervisor's or a council member's district, I would send an email saying, hey, this student got this award. It's really a big deal. Their school is in your area. It'd be nice if you recognize them. So they started going to city council and our board of supervisors. And that got sometimes news recognition. And they love that because it's positive. It shows that youth are doing a great job, all that kind of thing. And so that was a big one. That was just kind of me pondering. It's like, what can I do more for these kids? This is a nice award, but who knows? And, I had one student who, she came from another country and she was placed academically where she belonged, but by age, she should have been in middle school. But she got placed in a 4th or 5th grade class. She was new to the country. She had really good English, but they just didn't want to drop her into a middle school situation where she wouldn't be able to master any of the subjects. And so she won an art contest and we said what her age was, but she got it. And she was very proud because you're just new in schools and you get some recognition. And she got her recognition. She went to the city council and I think county board of supervisors. And her teacher called me one day and said, you don't know what this has done for her. Since she's gotten this, she has grown in confidence. Her reading is through the roof. We're going to promote her to 6th grade now and try to get her aligned, but it did something for her confidence. And I think that's some of the PR work, what we're doing. Mostly when we talk about unintended consequences, we think about bad things. Somebody's going to get hurt, some relationship's going to be broken. But in this case, it was like a confidence builder kid. And growing up is hard because adults like saying no. So you hear a lot of yucky stuff. And so I thought, that's a win. So I will always remember her. And I remember the teacher was just so thrilled. And she goes, just this confidence. She's mastered the subjects and she's moving on. I'm like, yay.
I love that. And I also really appreciate the idea of unintended consequences don't have to be negative, because you're absolutely correct. Sometimes they can be these wonderful surprise gems.
And we have to point that out.
Student, yeah.
We don't just say, yeah, that happened. I think a lot of times in PR, we don't do good PR for ourselves. And I remember first time I went to a national school public relations conference, it was just enlightening because everybody talked about what I was doing. And I'm like, it was like a master class and it was so exciting and I learned so much. And the executive director said, here are the 4 rules in PR that if you do this, this is for happiness and success. And the first one was do a good job. Number 2 is do a good job. Number 3 was do a good job. Number 4 was tell people about it, because I think we're really good about representing our organizations, fronting them, saving them, promoting them, preserving reputation, and then somebody down the road might think it just happened. And it's like, no, it was intentional and it was work. And so you got to point it out that this is the work we did. So whether it's an annual report, a presentation, something you put on your web pages for your organization, it's important to say you have award winning, because that's your peers looking at your work. So I think letting people know about the work you do is super important. And it's not every day. Should you be glorified for doing the basics of your job? No. But when things roll out properly, when there are unintended consequences, good or bad, because you learn from both, it's good to point those out. Look what we got done.
So in addition to your professional career, you've also been very heavily involved in the Public Relations Society of America and also our student chapter of the Public Relations Student Society of America. Maybe you could tell the listeners a little bit about that journey and your involvement and maybe some of the unintended positive consequences of being involved in those levels.
I remember, when I was a student, I had an opportunity for internships. Back then, they weren't paid, but we didn't care because we were in the game and it was exciting. And there were a lot of folks who I met and kind of helped my path without even me noticing. There's a really great book called 5 People You Meet in Heaven. And it talks about you might have never known them, but they impacted the path of your life by doing something kind or removing an obstacle that you didn't even know and they didn't know. But it's so true for this profession. And I think just giving back is really important. If we got something from it, we give something. I'm a giving kind of person, so that's why satisfaction way more than receiving. Receiving, I'm still very awkward. I'm okay taking compliments now and stuff, but yeah, I am the Wizard of Oz. I'm behind the curtain watching Oz, and it's like, yeah, here's a way for you to find some courage, and here's a way for you to find your heart. And oh my God, there's flying monkeys. Let's deal with it. And a witch. There's always a witch. But, I'm behind the scenes kind of pulling the pipes, making it happen. Do I have to be out front sometimes? Yeah. But that's never been the most satisfying part of the job. It's made me really good at sound bites and analogies. I got one for everything, but that's how I teach. So I think all those opportunities I had to give back or to save somebody from tripping down the stairs if they don't have to. And so I think giving back to your profession and to students is important. I never compete with anybody. I don't believe in it. When others have come to me like, oh, I want to start my own consulting business, I'm like, do it. There's plenty of work. What do you need to know? I'm meeting with someone tomorrow about that because it's like the more people I know, the better, I think. And why can't they have the fun? There's this belief that there isn't enough. There aren't enough good jobs. There isn't enough money. There isn't enough. And there's plenty. So, I try to tell students that too, get these experiences and volunteer and meet people, because the people I met at my very first job back in the day are still people I know to this day who have conspired for my good, who have introduced me to people, who have referred clients, who have done things, for my family. It happens when you run into people and get to know people and build trusting relationships. So I try to tell students that too, and other professionals. And I also think it's important that we continue to learn. If a person isn't curious, I don't know how to cultivate that in them. Have you ever figured out a way?
It's definitely challenging.
It's so important to be curious because, as I told one of my clients the other day, I kind of put all these pieces together on a really complex thing. And she goes, how'd you come to it? And I'm like, I did a lot of thinking, connected the dots, did some research, and came up with a likely scenario. It hasn't played out yet, but it's probably the most likely one. And that's what I learned to do very quickly. So I think being curious and not just doing things year over year because it's time for our annual blah. We're going to do blah and we're going to update the dates on it and everything. And it's like, my question is, do we need to do it? Is it serving us? Is it a bad habit? Like some newsletters that nobody's reading, and it's a lot of work and pain on your part, and it's like, is anybody even reading them? So I try to challenge students to be curious and continue to learn, because it makes me concerned. Even professionals I know that don't read books about PR or go to conferences or anything or podcasts. There's so many free ways to learn now. And TikTok is one where I just get sized pieces on certain topics I have interest in. And they've been very helpful. And no, I don't take it all just by what they say. I just do my research because I'm not going to fall into that. But you can learn in lots of ways. You learn from other people. You can ask. And that's why I'm involved, because many people help me come along to wherever I'm at. And so I just want to give back a little. I don't have the fortune to give, but I have the time. And my thinker still works. I like to share it.
I appreciate that very much, and know that obviously myself as faculty and our students are very continually grateful all you do for the students. So thank you for your mentoring and support. Things obviously are a little different now in the practical practice of public relations than they were when you first started. To maybe talk a little bit about that. How have things changed? And then we'll talk about maybe some things haven't changed so much. But let's talk about the change piece first.
Well, as I said before, it's like TV was big, and I don't want to say it's not relevant anymore, but it is an outlet that reaches a certain demographic. Make sure you know who you're talking to and don't make any assumptions. And I think it was easier in some ways to push out community information if you were in the major media outlets in your area. And now there's hundreds, and lots of people get their news online and what have you. And that hasn't made it better. There's more bad news and more confused news and just stuff that gets discombobulated. So you still have to use your scrutiny as much as possible to make sure the information is getting in front of the right people. So that was easier. Data was not so easy to come by. Like if somebody had money to do research, it's like, whoa, but they'd use it for 5 or 6 years. And, publics change. The people you're talking to change. And so the data wasn't great. But now there's a lot of data, and you can do quick surveys. By university standards aren't always the most reliable, but for a lot of PR efforts, you're going to get good information, because if you ask people what they think, they're going to tell you. And it might challenge what you're thinking. And I always tell people is like, do you know that, or do you think you know that? A lot of people get stuck in, I know my audience and they believe this and that and blue, 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 blue. And it's like, how do you know that though? And I've become a bit of a data nerd, but I can write a news release in like 3 minutes. I don't have to, it'll be good, but I still do research. I don't assume anything. I look for angles. I look for hooks, all that kind of thing. And I think we didn't do that as much back then. It's harder to get media attention now. And if they don't come to activities that we have, I'm just like, as long as we're on their social, because that's got more of the demographics we're looking for. And if they post it on their social, I don't honestly know how they manage their dialogue with the people who follow them, because it can be really bizarre and hateful and all that. So I'm like, for those people, I feel bad for them. So that was, having access to data is great. We're making better decisions. And when resources are tight, especially, you want to make sure you're going down the right path. And I think one thing that is still being dealt with that I dislike strongly is the patriarchy. When I started my career, it was alive and well, and harassment was a common thing for women. And, it's like play ball, blah, blah, blah. And it was, see, it's not going on now. It's not as much because the repercussions are stronger, but I would still say it's out there. And I apologized to my daughter. I said, my mom is kind of a trailblazer and I've tried to be. And I said, but we failed because you're still dealing with the same stuff. And so you've got to break this somehow because everybody's voice matters. And isn't because someone has a certain genetic or race makeup doesn't mean they are the all-knower of all things. It's just they have a title and they've had opportunity. And so not dealing with it as much. And as a consultant, I don't deal with it at all. If I detect it, it's like, we're not going to work together well. And I don't want others to work with you either because it's not a positive, mutually beneficial relationship. If you always have to be on your toes and suspicious and protective of yourself, you're not doing your best work. And people shouldn't have to work in those conditions. So that was very strong then. I remember a student I graduated with and I worked with for a little while. And she told me at her PR internship at a big Fresno government agency, the director chased her around the desk one day, and she told her professors and they ended the internship and everything. But it's like, somehow this guy thought it was okay to chase this college student thinking she'd comply or whatever. And she was shocked. And she goes, that's just not, they never tell you about that part. So I think societally, maybe we're getting better. I don't know. There's still plenty of bad behavior, but it's just what we tolerate. So that's different. And then, we all know the speed at which news moves and social media. And while some of social media is delightful, some of it is not when you have to deal with trolls and how fast incorrect news spreads. And so you have to jump on that right away. I really believe in holding statements because the truth is to sort out a crisis or a big issue, you have to spend some time and really look at it. And it takes more than 2 minutes. So putting a holding statement, we're as concerned as anybody, we're going to look into this. A few years ago when United decided to remove a doctor from a plane and dragged him down the aisle, knocking out a teeth and harming him over something that wasn't even true, I'm like, let's see what they do. And they did the thing, I'm like, the worst thing they could. The statement was from the attorneys saying, our employees were correct. We never break the law. We're always following, da-da-da. I'm like, I called a friend that day and I said, oh, the attorney did it. They lose. Their stock price is going to go down. The truth is going to come out. And the next day, stock price went down. They had to totally dial back that. And it's like, you can't let attorneys, you can work with them, but you can't have them, that doesn't protect you. And honestly, people are going to sue you. They're going to sue you. You can't be afraid of that. And a lot of people threaten it and don't do it, but always know what you're talking about, not what you think you know, what you know. And so I think this pressure of speed to get out no matter what is concerning, but you still have to be a good communicator and you still have to do your research. And then when you put it out there as clearly as possible, try to cut off any questions. Not all. This is what we know now. And people will apply their conjecture and people aren't even involved will have an opinion. And it's like, do I really care about what this lady in Great Britain cares about my issue here? It's like, gosh, she has all these followers. I'm like, that doesn't make her right. And so I think using a lot of scrutiny with what you say and how you say it is even more important now. And I tell all my clients, I don't care what profession they're in, I said, any meeting you go to, any outing you go to, any conversation you have, assume you're being recorded, especially leaders. Is it legal in the state of California? No, it requires two-party consent, but that does not keep them from putting it online. I just say, don't say things you don't want to come back to you. And if you do, make a quick apology and deal with it then. But I just say, always assume you're being recorded. There's always somebody somewhere. And do some criminals, even though there's all these cameras out and recordings, some criminals get away, but ultimately the scientists we have, we're able to find them. It's just not worth it to represent your clients or your company or say bad things. If you have a bad thing to say about your company, best thing you can do, if you can't affect change or you've tried and it's not happening, to get yourself out of there. Because if you're a PR person and you're talking bad about your company, it gets around and then other people don't want to hire you. Even though you might have had a great justified reason to do it, you've got to really watch what you say. That's the other thing is back then and now. Be impeccable with your word. It's part of the 4 agreements that I shove on everybody I meet. All you get is your reputation. It's one time. And you have the chance to help yourself or hurt yourself. So I always say people who complain, my boss is this, and da-da-da. I'm like, then go. Because word gets around and the world isn't as big as you think. There are people who know people, and unless you know everybody they know, there's no way to know that. It's just a dangerous thing to do. And it hurts your reputation. You don't want to do that because you want to do good work, right? Mm-hmm. So I think just the speed and, it's like, it's fine. The other thing is I think social media gets aggrandized. It's like this, and it's like in our PR practice, it's one tool. It's not the tool. There's a whole other plethora of tools you can use and tactics to reach people. And that might not be the best one because it moves fast if they miss it and what have you. But I think people are like, oh, it's online. Somebody said something bad. It's like, yeah, okay. No, we don't take that comment down unless it's like demeaning or rude or full of bad words or something, but we got to be able to take it. And I think sometimes, I've experienced this in person and online, sometimes we don't like the people who are telling us about our stuff. Now, are they incorrect? No. We just don't like the messenger. And so we automatically discount. And I've been at public meetings where the usual complainers give up to the podium and they're like, you guys, blah, 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 and you're terrible. And people get greatly offended. And we meet about it later. And I'm like, well, was that person wrong about where we failed? Well, no. It's like, so even though you might not like the person, consider the information. Often you can just ignore it, but sometimes it's like, if they're figuring it out, so will everybody else. So let's make sure we're doing the right thing. And so we've got to be, the messengers are everywhere, right? But there's a whole lot of people who don't know what we do. And you have to decide how much time you're going to spend on that in your career, in your job, whatever they have you do, because it can really tear you apart in the tummy, right?
Ooh, yes, it can. So we talked a little bit about some of the things that have stayed the same. Obviously, we talked about your word and being impeccable and the ethical piece, which I think is, of course, so critical. Anything else that you have seen really hasn't changed? You know, it's either a concept or a thing that you do as part of your practice, but we're still there.
I think people have a desire to be affiliated with good things. And I recognize there's another side, but don't tell people to support you. Give them a reason to, so that they can talk about it, and give them something concrete. So, you know, these talking points we talk about, be consistent with messaging. So I think that's super important. And I think we get all tied up sometimes in the mechanics instead of, now what are we trying to get done here? And thinking about that all the time, because we have to change our practice. Sometimes in the middle of it, things aren't working. It's like, well, this isn't working. What's next? Yeah, and shifting. And I think it's more acceptable to do that now, because people are not just changing jobs frequently, they're changing careers. So you'll have some experts out there and you'll have a bunch of generalists that you deal with. I'll have to think on the other piece of that. You know, I think people want to do good and be around people who are good. And so give people reasons to believe in you or your organization. And I think there's more opportunities for people who have been underrepresented. And I think that's super important. I don't have all the answers. You know, I try to have a diverse group of people I talk to in life. And because I'm still involved in the education sector, both K-12 and college, I ask students a lot of questions. And I would ask my daughter a lot of those too. And I just told her, I think probably in 2020, I said, I don't want to put any pressure on you, but it's your job to save the world. Because this generation, which I admire, if something has to get done, they just kind of chit-chat, get it done. They communicate online, they have a plan, but they don't spend time like with meetings and agendas and getting all these, it's like, you want to be involved, you join us. So they have a strategy of getting things done because they're not looking at all those rules that have held people back. And I've always questioned rules. You know, I've always said rules are no substitute for thinking. Policies, people, it's like, well, we can't do that, it's policy. And I'm like, okay, well, who writes the policy? Well, we do. And it's like, yeah, well, that was written in 1948. Do you think it's still serving the organization? And you have to change those things to suit you. And that's why this generation wouldn't even look at them. It'd be like, we're just going to get it done. We're going to fix these things. And I absolutely believe they can, because they're not being constrained by who are we going to offend if we do this and all that. And I marvel at watching it. I love it. And it keeps me on my toes in my practice too, because it's like, that's another audience I talk to. But I love talking to young people. It's like, but what about this? I had one recently, I think it was in August. I was working with a group of college students at an event one day. And I said, hey, yesterday the government confirmed that there were UFOs, and we've had some of their ships, and we've had some of their bio beings, and they've even found some interesting DNA in the strands around the world. And so, yeah, there's aliens. And I said, what do you guys think about that? And they're like, we knew. Why did they even have to say it? We know. That's just makes sense. And I looked at them. I'm like, I love you so much, because I love that. It was like, that makes sense. And for some people, that would really challenge thinking. And I think we need those around us too. I think back then and now, don't assume you have all the answers, but you can discover the answers. I have some wisdom and experience. All of us do, what we know in the past. But I also know a lot of my old tactics wouldn't work now. So what can I do, and how can we achieve what we're trying to achieve? And I also stay, back then I think people aligned with bosses. Oh, there's so-and-so, Betsy's there and I'm going to work there forever and, you know, be by her side. And now Betsy's more of an influencer and a mentor, but she doesn't have the pressure of, you know, you following her in her career. I think if we align to mission, we will always be successful, because people come and go all the time. Like in TV, like, oh, I got to know this reporter. I'm like, it's great to know the reporter. The reporters come and go. The photographers are the ones who have families here and stay, and, you know, you make your friends with them. But, you know, I've known photographers my whole career that I still see, and it's congenial, and sometimes I ask the better questions. So I get back to my curiosity thing. Back then and back now, that's something that hasn't ever left me. But I think if, you know, somebody's going to college, they're trying to learn, and we just heard a student a few minutes ago, she goes, I'm in my third year, and I just realized I don't know anything. And I'm like, that's what college is for, is to teach us what we don't know so that we remain learners. Because we only have this little course of study, right? And we get a degree. But on campus, there's hundreds of options. And you didn't get to those. So, remain curious about what you're interested in and keep going. Because those are the people that are fun to be around too. And who'll come up with the 11th hour, save when the whole team is like, oh, we can't think of anything else. Those are the people who'll do it. So I think some of the, I don't want to say tactics, some of the practices are the same, not many. And then you change with the times. And if you don't, you're not relevant. I think as you get older, you think about that. It's like, but as long as you stay tuned in and you're willing to learn from others, you're good. Am I alone in thinking this generation's going to save us?
That's my hope also, right?
Are we hoping, or do
goodness, right? No, without a doubt. And I really do appreciate the no-nonsenseness that you alluded to in a couple of your stories. The practicalness and the really not disregard of hierarchy, but just really not even understanding the relevance of it. And that's one of the things that I have always loved about social media, right? You can link on LinkedIn to anyone. And, we were raised that you had to go through this layer and this layer and this layer, right? But no, you can go direct to the CEO, you can go direct to this person, and there's no fear associated with that. And I think that is going to lead to some really cool change.
For sure. And that's relationship building only with courage, because I remember my first job and the CEO, it was a really bad political situation. And I was on a break. I never took a break. There were a lot of union people in the building. They always took their breaks, but we didn't. We were always running, doing things. And some reporters like, come on, let's have a break. I'm like, okay. So I'm sitting in there and the CEO just popped his head in and popped his head out. And then the phone rang in the cafeteria calling me in. And I'm like, because I'm not supposed to talk to him, and does he even know I'm alive? It's like, what? And it was a really bizarre conversation. I could tell he's fishing for information, but he's asking for, tell me about yourself and this and that. And I'm like, no. So I was just very general because my spidey senses weren't good. And later, weird things happened because of his actions, but it was scary. I was happy him not knowing who I was. Which is ironic because now I just work with leaders a lot and I seek them out and they seek me out. So back then, when you're just out of college, it's like, But yeah, he was just fishing and he wanted to know what the reporters were saying because there were some negotiating issues with their contract. And I'm sure they'd be telling me, newest person in PR, yeah, we're going to tell our organizing strategy. It's like, yeah, that's going to happen for sure. So yeah, that was nerve-wracking. But now I tell students, it's like, you know what? As a student and your first year's out, it is perfectly okay to reach out on LinkedIn and develop an email relationship. What tips can you give me? If you always want to work for your organization, tell me the best path. And if they don't help you, they'll usually put you in contact with someone who will. Because believe it or not, that kind of effort isn't always made. There's a lot of people who are very passive and wait. You can create jobs. You can say, hey, have you ever thought about this and that? It's like, wow. Start that conversation, but I think it's really important to widen your net and get to know people because, like I said, the world is small. I've been overseas and run into people from here, and you just look at them. It's like, what are you doing here? This weird place. And because the world is small, it's huge and it's small. So in the PR world, you're going to know a lot of people who will move, and you'll run into them again, and they will get big jobs, and maybe you'll work together again. So it's like, take advantage of the joy that is being a student and a recently graduated student because people want you to be successful. So reach out to them. And if you don't hear back, you didn't need to know them.
There will be others, right?
There will be many others.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about technology, but any other thoughts about how technology has changed and or impacted your career?
I think there is such a big news hole and desire for visual elements that we didn't have to used to worry about because they would do that. The news people would do that. We didn't have to provide it. And now it's like this constant, if you post on social without something visually interesting, it's not going to go anywhere. And knowing what your target audience likes, not everybody may like it, but if it's your target, that's your goal. But I think the pressure to do that and not just do it for the sake of doing it, but do it because it matters. You should never be trying to do a metric of, we need to have 43 social media posts a week on Insta. It's like, do you? Where do you come up with that? What are your metrics informing that? Because that's a lot of work. And I think even more so, being a good writer, because there's so many opportunities. People have such need for information to be presented in an understandable way. So there's so many opportunities to write and help others, be consultants, whatever you want to do. I remember there was a book around 2000, it was like Megatrends 2000. And his theory was the more high tech we get, the more high touch we desire. because technology is fun and people game and there's so many things and I love it, but you can't lose touch with the human experience, which is people, nature, and finding joy around you and your surroundings and things like that. And the technology can help you, hurt you. Mean people can say mean things that might affect you. So I think, using it to your best advantage, save you time and all that. Same with the AI. I don't know what it is, but I can detect AI writing, especially images. Oh my gosh, because there's no depth and there's no humanity at all. And I know AI is learning from us and it might continue on. And I've heard some health insurance companies are using AI when doctors are recommending procedures for people who are covered, and AI is making the decision. They say in consultation with a doctor, but I don't think so. I think there's metrics. So I think there's going to be some pushback that our brains are unique and technology might get close, but I don't think technology can turn around on a dime and change things or rescue people, deliver a great vacation. There's just things we have to do. So I think that'll continue to flow. I think writers are really concerned about AI and about replacing them. It's like, no, it might be a help to you. I use AI to write poems, rhyming poems about stupid things, and it's really terrible. And I rewrite them because I write stupid poems and limericks all the time. It's part of my writing practice. I was so excited. I was like, this is going to do it. And it's, because it's not nuanced enough or sarcastic, which is a joy. So I think all those things, we just from what we learn and we use them appropriately within the scope of what we're doing. But using AI to write your stuff because you're going to save time and you're just like so tired. First of all, it's not really ethical to pass it off as your own. And second of all, get some confidence in your writing. And that means taking a class or reading more. The more you read, the better you write. And I've talked to people who write for a career and they're just like, they never feel like they're there. Like, this is perfection. Because we can always find something, but we can't sit in analysis paralysis because we have to get the stuff out. So it's like, this is good for now. And the next time I do this, it'll be better. So, learning from those things and watching them and being aware. But there'll be a new tool next year and the year after that and the year after that. And we figure out, because when social media came, it started off with a few channels. It's like MySpace. There's no advertising. It's like, we're going to connect. And everybody has their first friend, whatever his name was. And hi, I'm so-and-so. And then, Facebook bloomed and then Twitter and Insta. And then pretty soon there's 200. You can't be on 200. Snapchat, TikTok. You can, but you have to decide what's best for your practice. And do you have all the money in the world? Because social media isn't free. It takes people time to develop the stuff that goes on there. And so it's like, do you have time to do all that and everything? So same with the next level of technology, whatever's coming out, I'm excited. I'll probably get it, but it's like, how does it work, right? Because it's fun and it's fun to learn. So that's part of your learning.
Being curious, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, how's that work?
So you've had your business for 10 years, which is, of course, very exciting. So the client mix, selecting clients, how do you decide who is going to get the benefit of your magic?
Honestly, when I first started, I did not have a plan. I've never worked in an agency. I've worked with agencies, and I honestly did not have a plan. I'm like, I'm starting my business, And I sat there, and I had one client kind of set when I started. I'm like, okay, and then I'll grow from there. And I was like putting it all in, and I got a call from a reporter friend of mine one day. His son and my daughter were friends. It's like, well, I heard from my son that, you started a business, PR business. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, are you going to tell anybody? I'm like, what? And he goes, we could put a brief in the newspaper and you could tell the Business Journal. And I'm like, oh man. And because I'm so used to being Oz in the background, I didn't think about putting myself in the foreground. And I'm like, oh, sorry. And I did that. And he was just laughing at me. We'd worked together for years. So I put that out and immediately I started getting calls from almost everybody I've ever worked with. I thought they were just calling to say, hey, good for you. And they said, oh, we have a project. And I'm like, what? And not that I was naive, I watched other people gain clients and what they do. I just never really applied it to my own life. So it started, and it still is, a lot of former people who I knew through my career field. I'm not necessarily here, so I have some clients around the state. And I learned early on that I was just going to take referrals. And number one is I just want to be a sole proprietor. I don't want to have employees. I definitely scale up with the volume of work, but I don't have the desire to do that. And I just want to kind of do my thing and have strategic partners who I bring in when I need them, but not as employees. And early on, these people would find me somehow on maybe LinkedIn or something, and they'd propose what they needed. We need this and this and this. So I'd bid based on whatever they said. And then I got there. And it wasn't this little project. It was a big, hairy beast that was invading their company. And they didn't even tell me that. And I'm like, well, I can't do this work for this many hours. So, and then you weren't really honest with me. And they're like, yeah, but we can't find anybody. It's because you lie. That's why you can't find anybody. So I had to kind of let a couple clients go. And that's when I decided I'm just going to do it with, if I don't know them find out if somebody I know knows them, because those are the people who really appreciate the effort. And it was several of the attorneys I used to work with at the law firm. It was people I'd worked with in education who weren't at the same school district, and just people who'd moved around. So I love the K-16 space. I've always loved education. I love K-12, and I love collegiate level stuff because it's everybody, hopefully sparking their own curiosity and what they're learning and changing their family dynamic forever. I've always stayed in that space, but I do other things too. And I do a lot of crisis still. And those primarily come through referrals from other PR people who maybe don't do as much crisis or don't think it's as fun as I do, and attorneys and other professionals in the town I've encountered. So I think being a crisis communicator is good. It's interesting, but those are very short term. And sometimes there's a longer term recovery, so I'll stay, but I just get them through the crisis and get them right. And then if they want me to continue, I will, but mostly they're okay. And so I have enough work to keep me busy and my brain occupied, and hopefully I'm doing good work. It's nice to be able to select who I work with, and not because I'm all snooty or what have you, but it's like I really like the connection we have when somebody really believes in PR. And those are the people who contact me. They're not like, I guess we have to do this now. I'm not that person.
So for folks who are contemplating this career, this wonderful career in public relations, what words of wisdom would you share?
I tell them to do it. I've known so many people who start in PR and then you wander off into another career. But because you're in PR, you get to see the whole organization. You get the whole global view. You're not off in a corner just doing accounts payable. And believe me, I love those people who master the math. I love that. But you get to really get a good view of the organization. There are positions out there that you've never even thought of or heard of. And you're like, what do you do over there? I'm interested in that. And you can learn a lot from those folks. And then it makes you more effective at what you do. Plus, it might lead you to another career. And I'm not saying get out of PR, because all the skills you learn in PR will serve you in any career you have. Your communication skills, your written communication skills, your speaking ability, all that will serve you in any career, because everybody wants to be understood but doesn't always know how to do that. And so I know plenty of people who are in PR who are CEOs and big time running big things, as they should. And I think that's one step is, it's getting into it and doing your best. Not leaving anything behind. And I know it's really hard early on to ask questions because you don't want to kind of point out that you don't know. And you don't get in trouble at work for not knowing things. You get in trouble if you don't learn things. And they're like, well, why didn't you say anything? Or why, whatever. It's like, try to find out things. And I know I sat a lot of times at meetings just not saying, I think this. I'd listen and go, but everybody here makes more than me and they have bigger titles and I better shut up. But I do remember that media organization, we were trying to come up with a new tagline. So they had to convene this big group of PR people and their marketing people and their reporters and everything. This 30 people, I got to be in there. So I suggested one, and they go, that's really good. But it's not good enough. So they hired an outside marketing firm. I think they spent 6 figures, did a year's worth of study, rejected all theirs, and at the end went with the one I suggested at that little meeting. And I sat there and watched that and like, you spent all that money and you did that to pick up the one that I already, it's like, okay. It was a process they had to go through. And I was just like, all right, you people. Some tips for success are to cultivate relationships. Get to know people and let them know you. I think sometimes we're so, what's that called when people, they feel like they're faking it? Imposter syndrome. And I think that's just a normal human thing when you're young in your career. I don't think you're an imposter at all. And you're just doing the job that they've assigned you. And all job descriptions are a joke. They tell you everything that they want you to do, but they know they're not finding anybody who has 100% of that stuff. So you do what you know, and then you learn the rest. And sometimes you find you don't even have to do it, and you're doing something totally different. But your job is what they have you do. And so learn that stuff and develop your relationships, because that's where all your joy will come from. That's where anything can happen. And you talk about a win. And when I was at Children's Hospital, there was this long-time patient, always had profound medical issues. This poor little thing was always in the hospital a lot. And she had Justin Bieber. Her room was all decorated Justin Bieber. Everybody knew she liked Justin Bieber. And he was performing at Bakersfield in Fresno or something back in that time. And she wanted tickets. And we tried through our contacts to get them. And I called Fresno State, Save Center. Do you know anything? Nothing there. And like, huh. And it's like, gosh, I wish. Her mom kept calling radio shows to win tickets because she could go out for an evening. And then I was talking about it everywhere. It's like, anybody have your tickets? Well, the foundation called me one day and they said this couple wasn't able to go. And they had 2 tickets and they wanted to donate them to the hospital. And did we have anybody we thought? And so immediately, because I'd put it out there, that person in the foundation called me and I'm like, oh my gosh. So they were going to deliver them to us. And so they were like an hour late, but we didn't care. We're just standing outside like sad little puppies waiting for them. So once we got them in hand, we were able to go in and give them to the mom girl. And she was so excited and so happy. I go home that night. night, I'm like, that's thinking, it'd be really nice if she could meet him. Wouldn't that be lovely? How am I going to do this? Well, there's some VIP things. So I put it out there on Facebook when it was like the night before the concert. And I heard back from Janelle Vera for JP Marketing. And she says, DM me, or we started texting, and she goes, my daughter's going, but I can give up mine so this girl will meet. So we set up time to meet, and she got the backstage pass, and she got to meet him and have a photo with him. And that's the power of relationships, because I put it out to people who were looking for these on my behalf. It's like, anybody have Bieber tickets? Nobody had them. It was really hard to get. It's like the Taylor Swift Eras tickets, like, good luck, tough to get. But to go beyond, and it's like, I'm just wondering if maybe she could meet him. And she got to, and it really buoyed her like for a really long time, and made her happy. And she came back happy, and the nurses were all laughing. And, it was a really lovely day. And it was thanks to relationships and Jane paying attention, saying, I'll give up mine so this little girl can go. And she can all watch her, because her mom couldn't go backstage with her. Jane was going to have to watch this girl in the wheelchair, and she did. And so, I'm just like, that is so lovely. So I think relationships are key, because in a million ways, you'll find ways to do good with people. And I love connecting people. Do you know so-and-so? You got to know each other. I did that with a friend. They had both just mentioned they were called to jury duty. So I texted them both. I'm like, you're both in the same jury assembly room. Get to know each other. And they did. And they went to lunch together, and they're friends to this day. But it's like, I love connecting people. So that's part of relationships. Always learn. We've talked about that. And I think our PR work is not about us. We bring the skills and our knowledge and our best thinking, but don't take anything personally, because it's not about you. If things didn't work out, it's not because somebody hated you. Things others do is always because of themselves. You might be on the side, being impacted by it, but you can't take it personally, because if you do that, then you might not make the bold decision you need to on a tactic. Because it's like, this might blow back. It might, but it also might be the greatest tactic in the history of PR, and it's going to be in all the textbooks. And so you can't worry about that, but don't take it personally. Use your scrutiny, do all your good things, but don't take it personally, because that can keep you from being your best self. And it's hard. The human condition is to take things personally and think everything people are doing is because of us. No, it's because of them. Full secret. And I always say, speak for those not at the table. If you're in an organization serving people, you speak for those who are not at the table. The people you're serving, they're not in your behind closed doors meetings and everything. So if there's a demographic that needs to be brought forth, you have to speak for those people who are not there. That's your job as a PR person. Everybody else is trying to operationalize everything else, and it's your job to say, this is going to impact these people in this way, and you have to speak for them. And a lot of people might poo-poo you, but I can tell you, your strategies will go down in flames if you don't consider all your publics and what could happen to them because of your actions. It could be good or bad. When good things happen, people just want more. And sometimes you can't do more. You can do with what you have. So definitely always speak for people not at the table. And then while you consider the rude and angry voices, you might not like the messenger, but think about what they're saying. And you can say, oh, that's baloney, and we'll take care of that. Or, yeah, they're right. I hate that they're right, but they're right. And I've got to do something about that. So that's one thing. And then I think I talked about this, align with what you believe in. If you do not like our U.S. tax system, do not get a PR job at the IRS, even if they pay you, whatever you want, because you won't be effective there. And you want to be in a field that you really believe in, that you can be proud of. And there's lots of those, because there's lots of people with lots of interests. And so you'll find that field, but look around. And if you get into a field that it's just not delivering what you thought, get out, find a new job. It's easier to find a job when you have one, but start looking around, because all you're doing is setting yourself up to be a better practitioner. It's not a failure. You learn something. You learned, I hate this. And I just don't like doing events anymore. But when you're young, it's fun because something happened. Look, I made that happen. But then, it's exhausting. And I mostly don't do those anymore. I do them with clients, but I don't do for clients. It's like, hey, we'll get so-and-so to come in and help with this. Yay. And it could be your ideas, but, I don't want to do this anymore. I used to. Did you do a lot of those early in your career? Yeah.
Yeah. Events are very much, they take a lot of energy.
Right. And it's like, the 1 year, it's like, where are the trash cans? Oh, no, we forgot those. Nice thing is there's apps now where you can say, I'm going to have a barbecue for 15 people on Sunday. What do I need? And it gives you the whole list of everything. Or I'm going to have a fundraiser for 400 people outdoors. What do I need? And it gives you a whole list.
There's an app for everything.
Yes, I know, right? It's like, I totally use that.
That's awesome.
And, believe in yourself enough to make sure that you continue to learn. And you don't always learn just in your field. If you're interested in something else, learn that too. So if you have to talk about the finances of your organization, you might want to get kind of up to speed on finance, because it will help you be better and a more effective speaker, especially if you have to represent yourself to your organization to others. So that's what I say. And then have fun. If you cannot have fun, there is no point. If I can't have laughs, I don't want to be there. And it's just my way. I'm consulting now for a large organization, and I was in a large organization, big muckety-muck meeting yesterday. And I just said like 3 things. They were all cracking up, and they go, "We never laugh these." I'm like, "Well, I'm here now." And they were like, "Yeah." Because we can do serious work and have fun. Because when you're relaxed, you think better. And in fact, the meeting ended an hour and a half early because we got our stuff done. So not because of my jokes, but it was just like people were in a good place. So it's like, but have fun in your way, because people will see you having fun. And it doesn't get better than that. You get paid to do something you like. Nice, right?
It's definitely the
way to go. And then also figure out a way to give back to your university or the people who helped you early on, because pay it forward always, because it's way more fulfilling to give than to receive, I think.
What a wonderful bow. Love that. And we completely agree with all of those wonderful things. So Jill, thank you so much for spending time with us today. It's been such a pleasure to hear about all of the interesting things that you've been doing and get some pearls of wisdom, words of wisdom. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Central Valley Stories, Advertising and Public Relations. Join us again next time as we talk history, trends, changes, and challenges with more of the region's veteran practitioners and agency owners. Until then, take care and be well.